Hannah Brooks wiped the sweat from her forehead as she checked the mineral scanner one more time. The device showed rich deposits of lithium deep beneath the rocky surface of Kepler 442b. She had been working as a geological surveyor on this mining colony for almost 3 years now, and she loved the peaceful routine of her days. The morning sun cast long shadows across the red landscape. Hannah could see the main colony buildings in the distance, their white domes gleaming in the early light. 2,300 people called this place home, far from Earth but building something new among the stars. She picked up her equipment and started walking back toward the base. The comm device on her belt crackled to life. "Hannah, this is Control. We're picking up some strange signals on the outer sensors. Can you see anything unusual from your position?" Hannah stopped and looked up at the sky. Everything seemed normal. The 2 small moons hung in the purple morning sky like pale coins. "Nothing here, Control. Just another quiet day on the frontier." But as the words left her mouth, she saw them. Dark shapes moving against the stars, growing larger by the second. Ships. Lots of them. "Control, I see ships approaching from the north. They're not ours." The response came quickly, filled with panic. "All personnel return to base immediately." "This is not a drill." "Repeat, this is not a drill." Hannah ran. Her heart pounded as she heard the first explosions behind her. The alien ships were massive, black as space itself, with strange curves that hurt to look at. They moved like predators, swift and silent. The colony's defense systems fired desperately at the approaching fleet. Bright streaks of plasma lit up the sky. But the alien ships seemed to absorb the attacks without any damage. More explosions shook the ground as the aliens returned fire. Hannah reached the main gate just as the first alien ship landed in the central plaza. It was enormous, easily the size of a city block. Strange doors opened along its sides and creatures poured out. They were like nothing Hannah had ever seen. 8 feet tall, covered in hard, shiny shells like giant insects. Their compound eyes reflected the burning buildings around them. They moved with terrible purpose, carrying weapons that hummed with deadly energy. "Run!" someone screamed. People scattered in all directions, but the aliens were fast. Too fast. Hannah saw her friend Billy Chen try to help an injured woman. One of the aliens pointed its weapon at him. The beam of light that came out made no sound, but Billy simply disappeared, leaving only a small pile of ash where he had been standing. Hannah ducked behind a storage container, her whole body shaking with fear. Through the chaos, she could hear the aliens talking to each other in clicking, buzzing sounds, but somehow she understood them. Her neural implant was translating their language automatically. "Secure the specimens," one alien said. "The Empire requires living examples of this species for the collection. Why keep any alive?" Another replied. "They are mammals. Disgusting creatures. Orders are orders. The Emperor enjoys watching inferior species in their cages." Hannah felt sick. These creatures were treating humans like animals to be collected. She watched in horror as the aliens began separating the colonists. Most were killed immediately, but some were forced into metal containers. A heavy hand grabbed her shoulder. She looked up into the faceted eyes of one of the alien soldiers. It said something to its companions, and they dragged her toward the containers with the other survivors. 18 people were loaded into the cramped space. Hannah recognized most of them. Maria Santos from the engineering department, old Pete Williams from the cafeteria, young Danny Kim who had just arrived last month. All of them were terrified, pressed together in the darkness as the alien ship lifted off from their destroyed home. Through a small window, Hannah watched Kepler 442b shrink away below them. The colony was gone. Fires burned where the buildings used to be. 3 years of human dreams and hard work, reduced to smoking ruins in less than an hour. The journey to the alien homeworld took 3 weeks. The containers were barely large enough for the humans to lie down. They were given water and a strange, tasteless food that kept them alive, but nothing more. Several of the older colonists became sick from the poor conditions. The aliens ignored their prisoners except to bring food and remove the dead. By the time they reached their destination, only 12 humans were still alive. The alien homeworld was a nightmare of twisted metal and dark stone. Massive structures reached toward a blood-red sky, and the air itself seemed to buzz with malevolent energy. Hannah learned from listening to the guards that this place was called Zephyr Prime, capital of the Zephyrian Empire. They were taken to a huge palace that seemed to grow out of the ground like a cancer. Inside, the walls were lined with cages of energy. each one containing a different type of alien creature. Hannah realized with growing horror that this was a zoo for intelligent beings. "Welcome to your new home, mammals," said one of the Zephyrians in perfect English. This one was different from the soldiers. Its shell was decorated with gold patterns, and it wore clothing that marked it as important. "I am Overseer Clix. You will live here for the entertainment of our noble visitors." Hannah and the other survivors were placed in separate energy cages. The barriers looked like shimmering air, but when Danny Kim tried to push through one, he screamed in pain and was thrown backward. "Do not attempt escape," Clix continued. "These barriers will kill you if you try to pass through them. Your purpose now is to show the galaxy how pathetic your species truly is." Days turned into weeks, then months. The humans were put on display like animals at a zoo. Alien nobles would come to stare at them, making comments about human weakness and inferiority. They were given barely enough food to survive and no medical care when they became sick. One by one, Hannah's fellow survivors died. Some from illness, others from despair. Pete Williams was the first to go, his old heart giving out after 2 months of captivity. Maria Santos lasted longer, but eventually stopped eating and faded away. Danny Kim tried to fight back against the guards and was killed instantly. After 7 months, Hannah was alone, the only human left in the Zephyrian palace, surrounded by the cages of other species that had been conquered and displayed like trophies. But she refused to give up hope. Hidden beneath her skin was a small device that the aliens had not discovered, a quantum communicator that all colonial surveyors carried for emergencies. It had been damaged in the attack, but Hannah had been secretly working on it, using small pieces of metal and wire that she found in her cage. Late at night, when the palace was quiet, she worked on the device. She had to contact Earth. She had to warn them about what was coming, because she had learned something terrible from listening to the guards. The attack on Kepler 442b was just the beginning. The Zephyrians and their allies were planning something much worse. They called it the final solution to the human problem. They were going to kill every human in the galaxy. Hannah's fingers trembled as she made the final connection on the quantum communicator. 7 months of secret work, using scraps of metal and wire stolen from decorative displays in the palace. The device was crude and damaged, but it might work. She waited until the deep hours of the night when the palace guards were fewer. The energy cage hummed around her, its deadly barrier unchanged, but the Zephyrians had grown careless. They no longer watched her closely. To them, she was just another broken animal in their collection. The communicator sparked to life with a weak blue glow. Hannah held her breath as she typed in the emergency codes that all colonial surveyors knew by heart. Earth. She had to reach Earth. Static filled the tiny speaker, then cleared for a moment. A human voice came through, faint but real. "This is Luna Station Control. Identify yourself." Hannah's eyes filled with tears. After so many months of alien voices and clicking sounds, hearing English felt like coming home. "This is Hannah Brooks, Colonial Survey Team 7, Kepler 442b. Emergency Protocol Authorization Alpha 779. Long pause. "Then Hannah Brooks? The Kepler colony went dark 7 months ago. We assumed total loss. What's your status?" "I'm alive, but I'm the only one left. I'm being held prisoner on the Zephyrian homeworld." "Listen carefully, I don't have much time." Hannah spoke quickly, telling them everything she had learned, the location of Zephyr Prime, the strength of their fleets, the alliance between the Zephyrians, the crystal-like Vorthak, and the energy beings called the Nexari. Most importantly, she told them about the plan to exterminate humanity. "They call us a pest species," she whispered into the communicator. "They're afraid of how fast we spread and adapt. The 3 empires have agreed to work together to kill every human in the galaxy." The voice on the other end was Commander Jake Morrison, a veteran soldier who had seen action in the border wars. Hannah could hear the anger building in his voice as she spoke. "How long do we have?" Morrison asked. "They're building a massive fleet. I've seen ships arriving every day for months. They're planning to attack all human worlds at once, starting with Earth. Maybe 6 months, maybe less." The signal began to fade. Hannah shook the device desperately, trying to maintain contact. "Hannah, we're losing you. Can you repeat the fleet positions?" She gave him the information quickly, describing the orbital defenses around Zephyr Prime and the locations of the Allied fleets. The signal cut out just as she finished speaking. Hannah sat in the darkness of her cage, hoping the message had gotten through. She had done everything she could. Now it was up to the rest of humanity to save themselves. On Luna Station, Commander Morrison was already moving. He burst into Admiral Kate Sullivan's office without knocking, his face grim with purpose. "Admiral, we have a priority 1 emergency. Hannah Brooks is alive, and she's got intelligence on a planned genocide attack." Admiral Sullivan was a woman who had spent 30 years in space, fighting pirates and hostile aliens along the frontier. She listened to Morrison's report without interruption, her expression growing darker with each word. "Get me the emergency council," she said when he finished. "Full activation. And Jake? Start Protocol Omega." Within hours, the most powerful people in human space were gathered in the secure conference room, deep beneath Luna's surface. General Rob Martinez commanded the Colonial Marines. Dr. Lisa Chang ran the Advanced Weapons Research Division. Director Alan Foster controlled human intelligence operations. "Ladies and gentlemen," Admiral Sullivan began, "we are facing an existential threat. 3 alien empires have declared war on our entire species. They plan to exterminate every human being in the galaxy." The room was silent as she played Hannah's transmission. When it ended, General Martinez spoke first. "How sure are we that this intelligence is accurate?" "Hannah Brooks has been validated through multiple security protocols," Morrison replied. "She's been a colonial surveyor for 8 years with perfect reliability scores. And the details she's providing match our own partial intelligence about Zephyrian fleet movements." Dr. Chang leaned forward. "What they don't realize is that they've just given us the greatest gift possible." "A death sentence is a gift?" Foster asked. "Knowledge is a gift," Chang replied. "For 50 years we've been playing the role of peaceful explorers and traders. We've hidden our true military capabilities because we didn't want to seem threatening. Now we know that didn't matter. They're going to try to kill us anyway." Admiral Sullivan nodded. "Protocol Omega has been activated. All hidden shipyards are now in full production. Our secret weapons programs are being fast-tracked for immediate deployment." The truth was that humanity had been preparing for this day since they first met hostile aliens a century ago. While they showed the galaxy small defensive fleets and peaceful colony ships, they had been building something else entirely. Deep in asteroid belts and hidden moons, massive shipyards had been constructing weapons of war. "What's our timeline?" Martinez asked. 6 months to build the fleet we need," Admiral Sullivan said. 3 months to plan the operation. We'll have 1 chance to strike first before they can launch their attack on human space." Dr. Chang smiled grimly. "I have some new toys that our alien friends have never seen. Adaptive AI systems that learn enemy tactics in real time. Quantum phase armor that can shift between dimensions. And something special I call viral nanites." "Viral nanites?" Morrison asked. "Microscopic machines that can rewrite biological code or corrupt computer systems. They adapt to whatever type of life or technology they encounter. Perfect for an enemy alliance made up of completely different species." Director Foster spoke up. "What about Hannah Brooks? Do we have any way to extract her?" Admiral Sullivan considered this. "She's given us the intelligence we need to save our species. The least we can do is save her, but it won't be a rescue mission. It will be the opening move of the largest military operation in human history." They spent the next 12 hours planning. The operation was given a code name, Broken Chain. Not just for humanity's freedom, but for all the enslaved species throughout the galaxy who had suffered under alien oppression. Meanwhile, on Zephyr Prime, Hannah had hidden the communicator again and returned to her role as a broken prisoner. But something had changed in the palace. The other captives, aliens from dozens of different species, seemed to sense that she had done something important. A small creature that looked like a furry lizard managed to whisper to her from the next cage, "The servants talk about you, human. They say you have not broken like the others." Hannah looked around at the other prisoners. Some had been here for years, decades even. Species she had never seen before, all reduced to entertainment for Zephyrian nobles. But in their eyes she saw something new. "Hope? What are servants?" she whispered back. "Lower species that work in the palace. They hate the Zephyrians but are too afraid to resist. But they watch you, human. You give them courage." Over the following weeks, Hannah began to understand the complex hierarchy of the palace. The Zephyrians were the masters, but hundreds of other species worked as servants, slaves, and laborers. Many of them had been conquered long ago, their homeworlds destroyed, their people scattered. They began to help her in small ways. Extra food slipped through the energy barriers when the guards weren't looking. Information about palace routines and security. Most importantly, news from the outside. The Zephyrian fleet was growing larger every day. Ships from their allies arrived regularly, until the orbital space around Zephyr Prime was crowded with warships. The servants whispered that the attack on human space would begin soon. Hannah could only wait and hope that her message had reached Earth in time. She didn't know about the massive preparations underway in human space, or the secret weapons being loaded onto ships designed for war. But she would find out soon enough, because in 3 months the largest human fleet ever assembled would arrive at Zephyr Prime, bringing with them a simple message: touch one of ours, and face the judgment of all of us. Deep in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, something impossible was happening. What had appeared to be a simple mining station for the past 50 years suddenly split open like a flower, revealing the largest shipyard humanity had ever built. The TFS Retribution emerged from its hidden dock like a sleeping giant awakening. The ship was over 2 miles long, bristling with weapons that no alien species had ever seen. Its hull was made from quantum phase armor that could shift between normal space and parallel dimensions, making it nearly impossible to hit with conventional weapons. Commander Sam Hughes stood on the bridge, watching as dozens of other ships joined the formation. At 34 years old, he was the youngest ship captain in the human space navy, chosen not for his age but for his psychological profile. The doctors had described him as having absolute moral clarity. When it came to protecting human lives, Sam Hughes felt no mercy for those who threatened them. "Sir, the fleet is forming up as ordered," reported his first officer, Lieutenant Commander Nancy Reed. The bridge crew was young, handsome, and deadly. Every person on the ship had volunteered for what they knew was likely a one-way mission. "How many ships total?" Hughes asked. 47 vessels, sir. 3 dreadnoughts, 2 carriers, 15 cruisers, and 27 destroyers, all equipped with the new adaptive AI systems and nanite weapons." Hughes nodded. It wasn't a large fleet by galactic standards, but it represented the most advanced military technology humanity had ever developed. Each ship was essentially a thinking machine, capable of learning enemy tactics and adapting its responses in real time. The fleet's Marines were led by Colonel Beth Parker, a woman whose family had died in the Kepler 442b massacre. She had requested assignment to this mission personally, and Admiral Sullivan had approved it without question. Sometimes vengeance and justice were the same thing. "Colonel Parker to the bridge," Hughes said into his comm device. "Time for final briefing." When Parker arrived, her face was set in grim determination. She was 42 years old, with short gray hair and scars from a dozen battles. Behind her came her senior staff, Major Tony Williams, Captain Sue Davis, and Lieutenant Rick Chen. "Colonel, give me your assessment," Hughes said. "My Marines are ready, sir. We've been training with the new powered armor and plasma weapons for 3 months. Each suit is equipped with nanite dispensers and personal shield generators. We can take the palace." Hughes activated the main display, showing a 3-dimensional map of the Zephyr system. "According to Hannah Brooks' intelligence, the palace is here, on the main continent. Heavy orbital defenses, but most of their fleet will be deployed for the attack on human space." "What about the other prisoners?" Parker asked. Brooks reported seeing cages full of different species. "We save everyone we can," Hughes replied firmly. "But our primary mission is to demonstrate human capability. The galaxy thinks we're weak prey animals. We're going to show them exactly how wrong they are." Meanwhile, in another part of the Sol system, Admiral Sullivan was overseeing the final preparations for the multi-pronged attack. The human fleet would hit all 3 Tri-Alliance homeworlds simultaneously, preventing any one empire from coming to the aid of the others. Dr. Lisa Chang stood beside her in the command center, watching as the last of the nanite weapons were loaded onto the ships. "Admiral, I need to brief you on the viral nanites one more time." "Go ahead, Doctor." "These aren't just weapons, they're evolutionary tools. When deployed, they scan the target species and begin rewriting their biological or technological systems. For the insectoid Zephyrians, they'll disrupt their hive mind communication networks. For the crystalline Vorthak, they'll corrupt their silicon-based neural structures. For the energy-based Nexari, they'll interfere with their quantum coherence fields." Admiral Sullivan raised an eyebrow. "In simple terms, Doctor? They'll turn the aliens' own biology against them. Non-lethal, but completely incapacitating. We can defeat them without committing genocide ourselves. And if they don't surrender," Dr. Chang's expression hardened, "then we have other options. The nanites can be programmed for more permanent solutions. At the same time, intelligence reports were flowing in from across the galaxy. Director Foster's spy networks had been activated, providing crucial updates on alien fleet movements and defensive positions. The Zephyrian main fleet is moving toward human space, just as Brooks predicted, Foster reported to the Emergency Council. They've left their homeworld with minimal defenses. They're confident this will be a quick extermination. General Martinez spoke up from his position at the tactical display. My ground forces are ready for all 3 targets. We've got specialized equipment for each species, environmental suits for the Vorthak crystal world, quantum disruptors for the Nexari Dimension Fortress, and standard assault gear for Zephyr Prime. What about the other species in the galaxy? Admiral Sullivan asked. How are they reacting to this alliance? Foster consulted his notes. Mixed reactions. Some are celebrating, thinking humanity will finally be put in its place. Others are worried about what comes next if the Tri-Alliance succeeds. A few have quietly sent us warnings through back channels. They're about to learn something important, Sullivan said grimly. Human beings don't go quietly into extinction, and we have very long memories when it comes to those who help our enemies. Back on Zephyr Prime, Hannah continued her careful routine of appearing broken, while secretly maintaining contact with the palace servants. The small lizard-like creature who called himself Slicks had become her primary source of information. The masters grow excited, Slicks whispered during one of their brief conversations. They speak of the final attack on human space beginning soon. Victory celebrations are being planned. Hannah felt sick, but she forced herself to remain calm. How soon? Days, perhaps a week. The great fleet has already departed. Hannah nodded and returned to her broken posture. But inside, she was counting days and trying to calculate travel times. If her message had gotten through, if humanity was preparing a response, they would need time to organize and deploy. She had to buy them that time somehow. The opportunity came during one of the regular exhibitions where Zephyrian nobles came to view the captive species. Hannah had learned that these aliens fed on the despair and fear of their prisoners. The more broken and hopeless the captives appeared, the more entertainment value they provided. But Hannah began to do something different. Instead of cowering in her cage, she stood straight and stared directly at the visiting nobles. When they made comments about human weakness, she laughed. You find something amusing, human? Demanded one particularly ornate Zephyrian noble. I find it amusing that you think you've won, Hannah replied clearly, her voice carrying to every cage in the chamber. You have no idea what's coming for you. The noble's compound eyes glittered with anger. Your species will be extinct within days. What could possibly be coming? Hannah smiled, and for the first time in months it was a real smile. Judgment Day. Her words spread through the palace like wildfire. The servants whispered excitedly about the human who had challenged the masters. The other prisoners began to sit up straighter in their cages. Even the guards seemed nervous. Overseer Clicks arrived personally to confront Hannah. You will explain your words, human. What did you mean by Judgment Day? I meant exactly what I said, Hannah replied calmly. You tried to break me, but you forgot something important. Human beings don't break. We bend, we adapt, and then we strike back. Clicks ordered increased security around Hannah's cage, but it was too late. Her defiance had awakened something in the palace. The servants began to move with new purpose, quietly preparing for changes they could feel coming. 3 days later, the first human ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zephyr system. Commander Hughes looked at the displays showing the massive alien orbital defenses and smiled grimly. All ships, this is Retribution. Target designations are being uploaded now. Remember, we're not just here to rescue one human. We're here to send a message to the entire galaxy. He opened a channel to the marine transports. Colonel Parker, your people ready? Ready and waiting, sir. Time to bring Hannah Brooks home. Hughes turned to his weapons officer. Charge all antimatter cannons. Target their command platforms first. Let's announce our arrival properly. The greatest battle in human history was about to begin. The silence of space was shattered as the TFS Retribution's antimatter cannons fired for the first time in anger. Beams of pure annihilation crossed the void, striking the Zephyrian defense platforms with devastating effect. The aliens' energy shields, designed to stop conventional weapons, offered no protection against weapons that unmade matter at the atomic level. Direct hits on targets Alpha through Delta, reported Lieutenant Commander Reed. Their orbital defenses are down 60%, Commander, Hughes watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. The Zephyrians had expected to face human ships with limited firepower, the same vessels they had seen patrolling trade routes for decades. Instead, they were fighting humanity's true military might for the first time. "Launch fighters," Hughes ordered. "All ships, advance to attack formation." From the carriers TFS Vengeance and TFS Fury, streams of human fighters poured into space. These weren't the bulky patrol craft the aliens knew about. They were sleek predators equipped with quantum torpedoes and AI pilots that could react faster than any biological brain. The remaining Zephyrian ships moved to intercept, but they were learning a terrible lesson about human technology. The adaptive AI systems on the human vessels analyzed enemy tactics in real time, predicting movements and countering strategies before they could be fully implemented. A group of Zephyrian cruisers attempted to use their traditional swarm tactics, surrounding a human destroyer from multiple angles, but the destroyer's AI had studied the maneuver through the ship's sensors and was already deploying countermeasures. Nanite clouds spread from the human ship, infiltrating the alien vessels and corrupting their navigation systems. Within minutes, the Zephyrian cruisers were firing on each other, their targeting computers compromised by human nanites. "Sir, we're receiving surrender requests from 3 enemy vessels," Reed reported. "Ignore them," Hughes replied without hesitation. "They showed no mercy to our colonies. We show none to them." Meanwhile, on the crystalline homeworld of the Vorthak, Admiral Sullivan's Second Fleet was demonstrating equal efficiency. The crystal beings had never faced enemies who could adapt their weapons to target silicon-based life forms. Their beautiful cities, grown rather than built, began to crack and crumble as nanites rewrote their fundamental structures. At the same time, General Martinez was leading an assault on the Nexari dimensional fortress. The energy beings thought themselves safe in their pocket dimension, but human science had learned to follow them even there. Quantum disruptor bombs tore holes in reality itself, dragging the Nexari back into normal space where they could be destroyed. Back at Zephyr Prime, the path to the planet's surface was now clear. Colonel Parker's marine transports descended through the atmosphere like falling meteors, their heat shields glowing white-hot. 2 minutes to landing, Parker announced to her troops. "Remember, we're not just here to rescue Brooks. We're here to show these bugs what happens when you mess with humanity." The Marines were equipped with the latest powered armor, each suit a small fortress of weapons and defensive systems. Plasma cannons were mounted on their shoulders, while their arms carried rifles that could fire several different types of ammunition, including nanite rounds. The transports landed in the palace courtyard with devastating force. Zephyrian guards rushed to meet them, but they might as well have been fighting tanks with sticks. The human Marines cut through them with mechanical precision, their armor absorbing energy weapons that would have killed unprotected humans. "Team Alpha, secure the main entrance," Parker ordered. "Team Beta, take the communication center. Team Gamma, find the prison levels." Sergeant Ryan Cole led Team Gamma through the palace corridors, following maps provided by Hannah's intelligence. The alien architecture was twisted and organic, designed to intimidate visitors. But the Marines moved through it like they owned the place. They found the first cage room filled with prisoners from dozens of species. Aliens who had been captives for years looked up in amazement as the human soldiers began disabling the energy barriers. "Where's the human?" Cole asked a small creature that looked like a cross between a bird and a lizard. The creature pointed with a trembling wing. "Down the hall in the special chambers." The masters kept her separate after she spoke against them. Cole found Hannah's cage at the end of a long corridor. She was standing in the center of the energy barrier, having heard the sounds of battle approaching. When she saw the marine armor with its distinctive human markings, she fell to her knees with relief. "Hannah Brooks?" Cole asked as he disabled the energy cage. "Yes," she whispered. "I knew you would come. I knew humanity wouldn't abandon me." "Ma'am, we're here to take you home," Cole said gently, helping her to her feet. "But first we have some business to finish with your captors." Throughout the palace, the servants who had whispered hope in secret corners were now rising in open rebellion. 50 years of oppression boiled over as they saw their masters being defeated by the humans they had dismissed as weak. Slicks, the small lizard creature who had befriended Hannah, led a group of former slaves to the palace armory. They weren't skilled fighters, but they knew the palace layout better than anyone. The master's quarters are on the highest level, Slicks told Colonel Parker when they met in the main hall. Overseer Clicks has barricaded himself there with his personal guard. Parker nodded grimly. Thank you for helping us. We'll take it from here. She led her remaining Marines up the twisted stairs to the palace's highest level. The Zephyrian guards they encountered fought with desperate fury, but human technology and training proved superior at every turn. They found Overseer Clicks in his throne room, surrounded by the last of his loyal troops. The alien noble was no longer the confident creature who had tormented human prisoners. His decorative shell was cracked with stress fractures, and his compound eyes darted frantically between the advancing Marines. You cannot do this. Clicks clicked in desperation. The galaxy will never accept human dominance. You are prey species. This is not the natural order. Parker removed her helmet, showing her scarred face to the alien. My family died on Kepler 442b. My children burned because you decided humans were pests to be exterminated. She raised her plasma rifle. This is what the natural order looks like now. The blast reduced Clicks to atoms, ending his reign of terror permanently. Outside the palace, the larger battle for Zephyr Prime was already over. The remaining alien defenses had surrendered or been destroyed. Commander Hughes's fleet controlled the orbital space around the planet, while Marine units secured major population centers. But Hughes wasn't satisfied with just defeating the Zephyrians. He opened communication channels to every ship and planet in the system. This is Commander Hughes of the Human Space Navy, speaking to all alien vessels and installations in this system. Your leaders attempted to exterminate the human race. They failed. Any ship or installation that does not surrender immediately will be destroyed. The responses came quickly. The Zephyrians had never faced an enemy that could match their technology and exceed their ruthlessness. Surrender requests flooded the communication channels. Sir, Lieutenant Commander Reed reported, we're receiving word from Admiral Sullivan. The attacks on the Vorthak and Nexari homeworlds have also succeeded. The Tri-Alliance is effectively destroyed. Hughes nodded, but his expression remained hard. Good. Now comes the important part. Open a channel to all ships in the fleet. When every human vessel was listening, Hughes spoke with quiet authority. People of Earth, we have achieved victory over those who sought to destroy us. But this is just the beginning. For too long, this galaxy has been ruled by the principle that might makes right. If that's the game they want to play, then humanity will play to win. He paused, looking out at the conquered alien fleet. From this day forward, any species that commits genocide or enslaves others will face human judgment. We're not going home to hide behind our borders. We're going to fix this broken galaxy, one tyrant at a time. In her medical bay aboard the Retribution, Hannah Brooks was being treated for months of malnutrition and abuse, but she was awake and alert, listening to Hughes's speech through the ship's communication system. Dr. Ellen Foster, the ship's chief medical officer, checked Hannah's vital signs. How are you feeling? Hannah smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. Like I'm home. Like we've just changed everything. Through the medical bay's window, she could see Zephyr Prime below them. The planet that had been the heart of a cruel empire was now under human control. But more than that, it was the first step in humanity's emergence as the galaxy's conscience. The small, weak prey species had revealed their true nature. They were not predators seeking to conquer and enslave. They were protectors, determined to ensure that no other species would suffer the way they had been intended to suffer. The galaxy was about to learn what it meant to face the judgment of humanity. And for the oppressed species throughout the stars, liberation was finally coming. 5 years had passed since the fall of the Tri-Alliance, and the galaxy was unrecognizable. What had once been a collection of empires built on conquest and slavery had become something entirely different. The coalition of free worlds now spanned thousands of star systems, united under principles that would have seemed impossible just a few years earlier. Hannah Brooks stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, the new galactic capital built in neutral space between former enemy territories. Ships from dozens of species moved peacefully through the station's docking bays, their crews working together on projects that benefited everyone. She wore the simple blue uniform of a galactic ambassador, but everyone in the galaxy knew her story. The human who had survived the Zephyrian palace had become the living symbol of resistance against oppression. Her testimony had helped convict war criminals and establish the new laws that governed civilized space. Ambassador Brooks, said a familiar voice behind her. She turned to see Slicks, the small lizard-like creature who had been her friend in the darkest days. He now served as her chief advisor, helping coordinate between the hundreds of species that made up the coalition. "What's the status on the Korath situation?" Hannah asked, referring to the latest crisis to reach her desk. "The enforcement fleet has arrived at their homeworld," Slicks reported. "Admiral Hughes is offering them the standard choice: surrender their slave operations and join the coalition, or face the consequences." Hannah nodded. It had become a familiar pattern over the past 5 years. Humanity's liberation fleets would arrive at systems where slavery or genocide was taking place, offer the oppressors a chance to reform, and then act decisively when they refused. The Korath were typical of the old galactic order, a species that had built their civilization on the backs of conquered peoples. They controlled 17 slave species across 43 worlds, treating sentient beings like property to be bought and sold. "Any word from their government?" Hannah asked. "They're demanding to know by what authority humans presume to interfere in their internal affairs," Slicks replied with what might have been amusement in his whistling voice. Hannah smiled grimly. "I think Admiral Hughes can explain our authority quite clearly." In the Korath system, the conversation was indeed proceeding along predictable lines. Admiral Sam Hughes, now commanding the largest human fleet ever assembled, sat in his command chair aboard the TFS Justice. The ship was even larger than the Retribution had been, equipped with weapons that could crack planets if necessary. "This is Premier Vok of the Korath Dominion," came the angry transmission from the planet below. "You have no right to interfere in sovereign Korath space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Hughes activated the main view screen, showing his scarred face to the alien leader. 5 years of liberation campaigns had left their mark on him, but his eyes still burned with the same determination that had driven him to Zephyr Prime. "Premier Vok, this is Admiral Hughes of the Human Enforcement Fleet. You are in violation of Galactic Accord 77 Alpha, which prohibits the enslavement of sentient beings. You have 24 hours to begin releasing all enslaved populations, or we will do it for you." "The Korath Dominion does not recognize human law," Vok snarled. "We have been masters of this region for 1,000 years. What gives you the right to threaten us?" Hughes leaned forward slightly. "The right of the strong to protect the weak. The right of the free to liberate the enslaved. The right that comes from having the biggest fleet and the will to use it." He paused. "In other words, Premier, the same right you used to conquer those species in the first place. The only difference is that we're using our strength for something better than profit." The transmission cut off abruptly. Within hours, the Korath fleet was moving to intercept the human vessels. It was a respectable force by old galactic standards, 300 ships with energy weapons and quantum shields, but the humans had learned much in 5 years of warfare. Their ships now incorporated technology stolen or copied from dozens of conquered species, combined with innovations that only human minds seemed capable of producing. The nanite weapons had evolved into something approaching magic, able to adapt to any defense and overcome any obstacle. The battle lasted less than an hour. When it was over, the Korath fleet was either destroyed or surrendering, and human marines were landing on all 43 worlds of the Dominion. Colonel Beth Parker, now a general, led the assault on the main slave processing center. Her powered armor was decorated with small marks representing each liberation campaign she had participated in. There were 17 marks now, one for each species she had helped free from bondage. The Korath guards fought desperately, but they were facing soldiers who had perfected the art of breaking oppressive regimes. Within hours, the slave pens were open, and medical teams were treating the newly liberated populations. "General Parker to Admiral Hughes," she reported from the planet's surface. "The facility is secure. We've freed approximately 2 million beings of various species." "Any resistance from the local population?" Hughes asked. "Some of the Korath civilians are protesting, but most seem relieved. Apparently their slave-based economy was failing anyway. They were facing revolution from within even without our intervention." It was another common pattern. Societies built on oppression were inherently unstable, and humanity's arrival often simply accelerated collapses that were already inevitable. Back on Harmony Station, Hannah was meeting with representatives of the newly liberated species. They were a diverse group: the feathered Alathi, who had been used as living computers, the crystalline Vorth, who had been mined for their silicon-based organs, and the gaseous nebular who had been compressed into containers and used as living batteries. "What will happen to us now?" asked Keth, the Alathi representative. Her species had been slaves for so long that they had almost forgotten what freedom looked like. "The same thing that happened to all the others," Hannah replied gently. "You'll be given worlds to call your own, technology to rebuild your societies, and protection while you recover. The Coalition doesn't abandon its members." Dr. Lisa Chang, now Director of Galactic Reconstruction, presented the rehabilitation plan. Her nanite technology had evolved far beyond its original military applications, becoming the foundation for rapid terraforming and ecosystem restoration. "We can have habitable worlds ready for your people within 2 years," Chang explained. "The nanites can adapt dead planets to support any type of life. You'll have everything you need to rebuild your civilization." "And in return?" asked Fourth Song of Crystal, speaking for the silicon-based survivors. "In return, you help us free others," Hannah said simply. "That's how the Coalition works. We save each other." It was the philosophy that had transformed the galaxy. Instead of the old system where strong species preyed on weak ones, humanity had created something unprecedented, a civilization based on mutual protection and shared prosperity. The results spoke for themselves. Trade was flourishing between species that had been enemies for centuries. Scientific cooperation had led to breakthrough technologies that benefited everyone. Most importantly, the galactic slave trade had been completely eliminated, along with most other forms of systematic oppression. Not every species had joined willingly. The Galactic Enforcement Archives now contained records of over 300 military campaigns against slavers, genocidal regimes, and other oppressive governments. But for every tyrant destroyed, dozens of species had been liberated and welcomed into the Coalition. "Ambassador," Slick said quietly, "there's something else you should know about the Korath situation." "What is it?" "Intelligence reports suggest that some of the surviving Korath leadership is planning to join the Resistance." Hannah sighed. The Resistance was what remained of the old galactic order, species and factions that refused to accept the new reality of human dominance. They conducted guerrilla attacks on Coalition ships and tried to destabilize liberated worlds, but they were fighting a losing battle. "How serious is the threat?" Hannah asked. "Limited. Admiral Hughes estimates they have perhaps 50 ships total, scattered across the galaxy." "More of a nuisance than a real danger?" Hannah nodded. The Resistance was largely irrelevant because they had fundamentally misunderstood what had happened. They thought humanity had simply replaced the old empires as the galaxy's dominant power. They didn't realize that humans had changed the entire concept of what power meant. Instead of using strength to dominate and exploit, humanity used it to protect and liberate. Instead of seeking tribute and slaves, they offered partnership and freedom. It was a revolution in thinking that had made the old ways of galactic politics obsolete. "Any other business?" Hannah asked. "The Council of Species has requested another address from you," Slicks reported. "They want you to speak about the Memorial Project." Hannah nodded. The Memorial Project was perhaps the most important work the Coalition had undertaken. On a small moon in neutral space, they were building a monument to all the species that had been wiped out by galactic wars and genocides over the past 1,000 years. Each extinct civilization would be remembered, with a crystal containing everything that could be recovered about their history, culture, and achievements. It was humanity's promise that such losses